What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Falco Takeaway. I'm back. 2-week break, but we're back here. We got a lot to talk about today. We got some NFL, we got some NBA. First, I definitely want to start on the Super Bowl recap. Didn't touch on that. We'll touch on the DeShaun Watson trade rumors, and then when we flip to NBA, we'll talk about how is Anthony Davis's injury going to impact the Lakers. Are the Jazz the best team in the NBA right now? And then are the Philadelphia 76ers the team to beat in the Eastern Conference? All right, to start off, I want to hear you guys' takeaways on the Super Bowl. I mean, Tom Brady with his 7th Super Bowl ring, the most by any player since Bill Russell in terms of individual rings, his 5th Super Bowl MVP. I mean, I guess it's safe to say he's classified himself as the greatest of all time. But what do you think this impacts on Mahomes' legacy? Does this hurt his legacy, because his numbers weren't that great, even though if you actually look at his performance, I thought he played fantastic. And then, how is this impacting Tom Brady, age 43, going to a new system, and again, Super Bowl champions? Billy, I'll start with you.
Yeah, so Tom Brady winning that 7th ring in 10 appearances, and just the other records that he's already set that he just continues to put out there in no man's land as far as touchdown passes, games, wins, all those things in just the postseason himself. The connection with Gronk, they've surpassed Jerry Rice, Joe Montana, and those guys now too. The way he's just sitting these numbers out there, especially doing it at his age, I just feel like he's put it out there where no man is really ever going to come close. However, the effect on Patrick Mahomes' legacy, I don't feel like it's necessarily a negative. I mean, when you get to the Super Bowl, you're supposed to lose to Tom Brady, and maybe not with the Bucs. We're typically used to seeing it, obviously, with the New England Patriots. However, but this was Tom Brady's offense. About mid-season, these guys were really starting to struggle, and we started to hear a lot of chirping about Bruce Arians allowing Tom Brady to start coaching these guys like he wasn't allowed to do in New England. And it really started to take form in a way that what we kind of recognized Tom Brady doing. And when we got to the Super Bowl, we knew he was going to have a game plan to attack these guys that was going to be, it was going to work. And essentially, it was going to be on Mahomes to do it for the Kansas City Chiefs. I'm with you on Mahomes played incredible. And if 2 touchdown passes don't bounce off his teammates' faces, it's a 31-23 ball game and a whole lot different landscape, especially if Tyreek Hill catches that one early. Tough catch nonetheless, but it did hit him right in the face, that Darrell Williams catch. As he's like laying horizontal with the ground, hits him right in the face at the goal line as well. So they had the opportunity to change the landscape of this game and really couldn't get it done. A shanked punt. I mean, everything was going wrong that possibly could go wrong for Kansas City, but I still think they had some opportunities to at least make a push to change the landscape of the game. But ultimately, it was a good old-fashioned butt kick, and I think a little bit that's being overlooked. The Eric Bieniemy situation, why isn't he getting a head coaching job? Well, watch the Super Bowl. We knew that they were going to be thin on the offensive line, especially at the ever so important left tackle position, and we did nothing with running backs chipping, no extra tight ends, no RPO stuff that could offset some of that pass rush and really attack what the Buccaneers did not do well all season on defense. And they did nothing out of the ordinary to try to alleviate the issues in that offensive line leaking like a sieve, and they left Mahomes out there to dry and try to do it all himself. They also continually try to take deep shots. Now, when your quarterback doesn't have time to throw, we can't be looking for McCole Hardman on deep crossing routes. That's just not a solid game plan, in my opinion. The second half, they came out, they ran the ball a little bit, had some success. However, they quickly abandoned it. They didn't stick with it and put Mahomes right back in harm's way and really just kind of left it in his hands to try to go out and be a magician. And that's just not going to get it done against a defense with that much talent, that's getting that much pressure without having to send any extra defenders, and as well as Tom Brady, who's going to get down the field and continue to put together good, solid, long drives. And when you start getting gashed by Leonard Fournette late in the game, it was just it was a leaking sieve in every facet of the game for Kansas City. Unfortunately, they took a big L, took it on the chin pretty hard in this one, but I do think it'll be a big opportunity for Mahomes to learn. Also, that Chiefs coaching staff, we've seen Andy Reid not have his best game plan and kind of stick to his guns a little too much in big games over the years, dating clear back to Philadelphia. Sometimes these guys need to change up their game plan, change up what they're doing to alleviate some of the issues that we knew they were going to have coming into this ball game.
Well, what's done is done, right? Tampa Bay won. Kansas City didn't even score a touchdown, which was unbelievable to me. How many people lost money on the Super Bowl because Kansas City couldn't find the end zone? Yeah, me. But when you have a guy, Billy said it the best, there's not too much I can say here. When you go to the Super Bowl, you're just expected to lose to Tom Brady. And I've been saying it for years that I don't ever expect another quarterback or another, let's say starting quarterback to win 7 Super Bowls, let alone 6. I think 5 is like the benchmark for a stud quarterback in the record books. If you look back through the history of the NFL, everybody said, Joe Montana is the best quarterback ever because he won X amount of Super Bowls. Well, Tom Brady has doubled that. Terry Bradshaw won 4, I believe, and he was the benchmark for a little while. And then Tom Brady just comes in here, and it's unbelievable what Tom Brady has done. He could have been on any team, and I'm sure you guys, throughout the week or the last 10 days since the Super Bowl's been over, you see, photoshops of Tom Brady with the Jets or Tom Brady with the Lions. Like, this is your final test, like an old action movie, like Lethal Weapon. This is the final boss, Tom Brady. You have to go play for the Jets to win a Super Bowl. All it means to me is, he has nothing left to prove. He had nothing left to prove the last time he won a Super Bowl, but he keeps doing it. For what reason? This time last year, I wrote an article right after he switched to Tampa Bay, and it was basically saying, he's like an evil genius, kind of like Dr. Evil with the laser beams on sharks' heads. It's like there's nothing left for you to do. So why are you so driven? Like I just want a little piece of that. Most people don't have an ounce of discipline or an ounce of integrity or honor as professional football players do. And when it comes to Tom Brady, at this point, he's just doing it to do it. Kind of like when you have a puppy who uses the bathroom in the kitchen. You rub their face in it and hope they'll learn. Tom Brady is doing this to every professional football player and coaching staff in the league. Grown men. He's making people look silly. He's making analysts like us, DFS players. He's just saying, what? I can do it to do it. And then the icing on the cake, he wants to get wasted at the Super Bowl, at the Boat River Super Bowl parties, throwing around the trophy. And then again, people look, in today's day and age, right? People look for any little thing they can hang on to kind of disparage your character or bury you or say this guy or this girl is a nobody or nothing. Doesn't mean. So Tom Brady wins all these Super Bowls. He's taken all Tampa Bay of all teams to win, and people, they don't talk about that. They say his character stinks. The lady's father, who created the Lombardi Trophy, is serious. She sent out a tweet and wrote an article that she cannot believe that Tom Brady is disrespecting her father, his father's legacy in such a nature where he's, celebrating and he throws the Super Bowl trophy to Gronk. I mean, you get to a point where there's nothing bad you can say about someone. You have to make up kind of like this odd, ridiculous kind of things. Tom Brady is the greatest football player of all time. Tom Brady was the greatest football player of all time 3 years ago, 5 years ago, whatever you want to do it. So at this point, it's just, you're kind of just nitpicking and throwing stones here. So that Super Bowl wasn't, I hate to do this on your show, but it wasn't really telling. We knew all we had to know about Tom Brady years ago. Again, this was just icing on the cake. And more so, Tampa Bay didn't even score a touchdown, as I said. That just makes it that much better. That makes it even sweeter for Tampa and Tom Brady here. So, again, to close this and put a nice little bow on what I'm saying here, Tom Brady is the greatest football player of all time. Personally, I find him to be, top 2, Jordan, Tom Brady. He's the best overall athlete of all time because right now people always judge it on rings. People say rings, aka championships. Tom Brady has a ton of them right now. So Tom Brady is the greatest football player of all time.
A few things. I'm all for giving Tom Brady his flowers for accomplishing this, but it comes to a point where he's just getting too much credit, like he's single-handedly winning a one-on-one football tournament, which doesn't exist. A few things. Number one, Tom Brady going to a new system, which a lot of people, and I was guilty for this at one point, called him a system quarterback. That is now factually incorrect. That statement is officially, that take, everyone who made that take, which a lot of people didn't age very well. He's proved that wrong. He went to a new system. Sure, plenty of talent around him. Let's not act like he just went to a sorry franchise, because they're a great team. Defense and offense. The weapons he has around him has been significant. You got Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, 2,000-yard receivers prior to him arriving there. Gronk looked like he turned back the clock. Cameron Brate's a good tight end. You drafted an offensive tackle in the first round. You have a good offensive line. The defense, all year long, I've been raving about them, and everyone was doubting me about that take. I said that's why they're going to go to the Super Bowl. I've been on the Bucs train since about October. I said that they will go to the Super Bowl, mainly because of that defense, and Brady knows how to manage the game. game. With that being said, going to a new system, no OTAs, no training camp, no preseason at age 43. Right then and there, you have to think, okay, he's got to have a slow start. He's obviously not the guy he was at 35 years old or 30 years old like he was in 2007 or something amongst those lines. So I expect him to have a slow start, September, October. Then November, December, he's really going to hit his stride. Some of that was true, some of that was not. November was the worst I've ever seen in my life, and then December came and he looked like an MVP again. Throw for over 4,600 yards, threw for 43 touchdowns. And their road to the Super Bowl to be champions, that was impressive who they beat, though. It's not Tom Brady just beat them. The Buccaneers beat them. Going into the Superdome, going against Drew Brees and those New Orleans Saints team, I was never a true believer of them, but that's still a very impressive win on the road. And despite Brady's never been to a Super Bowl without getting a first-round bye and having that home field advantage luxury. Conference championship, the MVP and Aaron Rodgers. The Packers were most people's favorite to win the Super Bowl all year long. Defeated them, even though I still think between the quarterback matchup of Brady and Rodgers, I still think Rodgers outplayed him. And then with that being said, the Super Bowl. Going up against the king and the best player in the league in Pat Mahomes. But now let's actually dissect the game. Brady had to manage a game which he's probably the best at in the world in terms of just managing a game. If you're going to have your defense play lights out, give you pieces on the offensive side of the ball, and Brady's going to manage a game, of course he's going to be lights out. Of course the Buccaneers are going to win. They got the Super Bowl MVP wrong because it deserves to go to Todd Bowles. He's the number one reason the Buccaneers are Super Bowl champions right now. Sure, he had a great performance. Sure, he played well. But the defense set the tone, and defense wins championships. Offenses wins games. That is the difference in this ball game. Mahomes ran for 500 yards behind the line of scrimmage. If that doesn't say enough, I don't know what will. The way the Buccaneers put pressure on him, any quarterback you put pressure on, they'll never be the same. No quarterback, especially if you put pressure on Tom Brady, he will never be the same. But Tom Brady had time in the pocket to read a book, call his wife, maybe take another nap, and then he had time to make a decision. So if you're going to give Brady that much time against a poor defense, which I've been concerned about that Chiefs defense all year long, of course Brady's going to eat you alive. But Mahomes had nothing to work with. Sure, you could say that was the worst game of his career, but I mean, like Billy said, like Chris said, Tyreek Hill dropped a touchdown, which was one of the most magnificent throws I've ever seen in my life. Rolling left, throwing off his left leg, hit Tyreek Hill in the helmet. That was a game changer. The Chiefs would have been up 7-0 right then and there. We look at Travis Kelce dropping a first down on a key third down. Momentum killer. And then Damian Williams late in the game, that was the greatest throw I've ever seen in my life. Better than the throw Rodgers had against the Cowboys in the divisional round of the playoffs. Mahomes being parallel to the ground and hitting your teammate in traffic, parallel to the ground, was the greatest single throw I've ever seen in my life. And that's why Mahomes' numbers look so bad. So for all the goofballs and stat geeks out there who love to read the box score, go on and the Pro Football Reference, or for NBA-wise, you go on NBAReference.com or whatever it's called. There's context behind that. The stats tell a story, not the full story. You need to look at games and dissect what actually happened to evaluate someone's performance. I thought Mahomes had a really slow start in that game, but overall, his performance was fantastic. He was fantastic in that game. The Chiefs missing, I think, 4 starters on the offensive line. Their top 2 tackles were out. What did you expect against a defense who knows how to put pressure on the quarterback? And in the Week 12 matchup, when Tyreek Hill received for 203 yards and 2 touchdowns in the first quarter, from what my estimation is the most in NFL history in a first quarter, of course they're going to have a different game plan. Tyreek Hill was taken out of the game. He was always doubled. There was always safety help on him, so you can't beat him with the deep ball. And Travis Kelce didn't show up. Travis Kelce didn't show up. So Mahomes was basically expected to be a magician, beat them by himself. Unfortunately, he can't throw to himself, and that's why the Buccaneers are Super Bowl champions. As much as everyone wants to rave about Brady, his rings, his accomplishment, how great it is that he beat Mahomes, he beat Rodgers, he beat Brees, the Buccaneers as a team, coaching, front office, the players, top to bottom, is why they're champions, not just Tom Brady. We need to give more credit to the entire roster and not just him, as much as I will give Brady his credit and as much as everyone else should give Brady his credit. That's my takeaway on the game.
Yeah, and to your point, that playoff run was really impressive. I mean, Tom Brady not being very Tom Brady-esque in that NFC title game. He threw 3 interceptions in the second half, and the Packers got almost nothing out of those extra opportunities with Aaron Rodgers. that defense really dug its heels in and really got confident as the year went on. And to beat the Saints, they had 2 butt kickings from the Saints, and the last one being a 38-3 slashing that they got right before the Bucs really started to kick it into gear, and things really kind of got going for them as they kind of realized, like, whoa, there's different levels to this game, and maybe we need to just kind of buy into what Brady's selling here and get going. And, it's really kind of telling, too. Teams have a hard time beating a team 3 times. But a divisional team, you've already beat them twice, playing them in the playoffs, it's never bode that well for the team that had those 2 regular season victories. But still, the way that they lost those games, there wasn't a whole lot of indication that the Buccaneers were going to close that gap on the Saints, especially how bad that last game worked out for the Bucs. But Tom Brady, like you said, in the NFC title game, those 3 interceptions and that defense not giving up much to the Green Bay Packers, that game could have gotten ugly, and they had every opportunity to close that gap as they kind of got jumped on by the Bucs. But getting into that Super Bowl, the weakness of that offensive line and getting Vita Vea back on that defensive line, the Buccaneers statistically were way better as a defense as a whole with Vita Vea on the field. Just way too many pass rushers, way too much speed, and it just allowed that secondary to sit back there and be smart. While you said Mahomes ran for 500 yards behind the line of scrimmage, trying to find and buy time to make some of the most incredible throws that we'll ever see be incomplete in NFL history. Just sad day for the Chiefs, but ultimately, when you're there, you're that weak. Like you said, Travis Kelce still had 10 receptions, didn't show up, but he did have times where he would catch 3-4 balls in spurts, but they didn't do anything consistently to try to work him over the middle and clear out space for him. And then, of course, that 3rd and 8, right when the Kansas City was this is the last chance for them to try to make a push, to try to do something right before you knew that the game was over. When he dropped that ball, it was just a snowball effect. You could just see it just was not going to happen for Kansas City that day.
One more thing about the Super Bowl. Patrick Mahomes, in my estimation, he's the greatest quarterback I've ever seen in my life. From what he does, and it's not just a talent perspective in terms of the way he throws the football, his mind, the way he can read defenses, the way he extends plays is the most special thing maybe I've seen in sports, at least in my lifetime. Sure, Brady's more accomplished in terms of team success, but Mahomes is a 3-year starter, and if you want to talk about this 3-year stretch that he's had to start his career, Brady did not jump out of the gate like that. Nobody did, in my estimation. I think he has the potential to go down as the greatest quarterback in the history of football. But the thing is, people love rings. He went against Tom Brady, and the Buccaneers beat the Chiefs, even though people like to say Brady beat Mahomes. Does this negatively affect Mahomes' legacy and kind of kill the notion that he can never be the GOAT? What do you guys think about that?
I don't think so necessarily. Everybody had already, said, Pat is in his 2nd Super Bowl in 3 years, in his 3 seasons as a quarterback. And it's just one of those things where even as young men or young girls, let's say, when we're growing up, there's all these adages. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. If you get knocked down 8 times, you get back up, 9 or however the old adage or cliche is. And everything I feel that we need to know in life as adults, we learn when we're kids, growing, first job, we go to college, whatever it may be, first heartbreak in a relationship. You use these things and it's experience. You use these things as fuel. And so when you get into a situation, much like the Super Bowl, I've never played in one, so I can only just imagine here. I've seen that before. I've done that before. And Patrick Mahomes, this is only going to make him even stronger. I'm not a Dragon Ball Z guy, but I see a lot of those GIFs and memes where one guy's on fire and he goes nuts, like after he's, his family or his dad gets killed or something like that. Patrick Mahomes is going to go wild, and he's going to use this as fuel in the future, just like Tom Brady did last year. They didn't look good, as you said, in November. They looked awful. Kansas City beat them pretty good, and he put it in his bag of tricks here and let it fuel him for the future. I'd like to think Patrick Mahomes, I'm with you, the best quarterback I've ever seen play football. He's not a dummy. He's smart. He's wise. He has everything it takes, and this is only going to make him stronger. Imagine, you're at work and somebody puts you down, says that Chris is a dummy. You get written up. What do? Do you go back to the office and you fight somebody or you smash the time clock? No. If you're a good person and you're a hardworking person, it only fuels you to do better, to bury people, to go forward and be what you want to be. And Patrick Mahomes is going to be fantastic. He already is.
Yeah, and to put Patrick Mahomes' season into perspective, this guy had over 4,700 yards and 38 touchdowns in 15 starts. Had the Chiefs not already had the number one seed locked up, and he played a 16th season, third-year starter, he'd have two 5,000-yard, 40-touchdown seasons, something that we look at some of the greatest quarterbacks of our era doing in their MVP or their career years, and he would have done it twice, two before he even really has hit his prime. I mean, he's just getting going. He said himself, he had that 50 touchdown season. He really didn't know how to read defenses until about the middle of the following year. So this is a guy that's, a year and a half into really playing quarterback at an NFL level, and it's just a testament to his challenge. And you look at his health. Okay, Travis Kelce, Tyreek Hill, great. He didn't have another receiver that had 500 yards receiving and still threw for 4,700 yards. He's not doing it with the best surrounding cast, and really no running game to speak of as the season progressed. CEH got out of the gate doing well. He was top 5 in rushing about mid-season, but the rest of the year, injuries, he didn't play, and the other running backs were really ineffective or didn't get much opportunity. This offense is the scariest in the NFL because of Patrick Mahomes and solely because of Patrick Mahomes. I mean, yeah, Tyreek Hill's great. Travis Kelce's great. Don't get me wrong. I'm not taking anything away from those guys, but you look at the most prolific offenses we've seen, the Colts with Peyton Manning, Tom Brady with Randy Moss in the game, Peyton in Denver. There's 3 receivers and a tight end that had really good Pro Bowl level stats in those offenses, not just 2 guys and a quarterback. And I think that's really a testament to the talent that Patrick Mahomes is and what he can do himself with his arm talent that no one else we've ever seen has been able to do.
Correct me if I'm wrong here. When it comes to Kansas City, I don't mean to come off rude or sound like a jerk here, but as long as Patrick Mahomes is the quarterback, I don't think it really matters who the tight end is. Travis Kelce's going to be gone and out of the league in a few years. It's like a turnstile. You could put anybody with some NFL style kind of talent at tight end or wide receiver, and Patrick Mahomes is going to make you a star. So with him anchoring the team at quarterback, Kansas City's going to be very good for a long time.
In terms of Pat Mahomes' legacy, if your perspective is coming from a Brady stan or a casual fan, this kills Pat Mahomes' legacy. Few reasons, because you got to defend Brady any way possible. You love to use the team accomplishment, the ring argument. It's 7-1 right now. I think the Chiefs still will rack up championships as long as Mahomes is under center. So I think for him to get 7 would be ridiculous, and that's going to be a longevity thing, which you can't predict the future. You can't predict injury, so it's kind of hard to say he will get 7. But I think the biggest thing in terms of hurting his legacy is Mahomes as a starting quarterback has 2 playoff losses, and they just happen to be against Tom Brady, even though I don't blame one bit of Mahomes in either of these games. I don't. In the AFC Championship game in 2018, D Ford lining up 6 inches offside is the sole reason the Chiefs did not go to the Super Bowl. That is not my opinion. That is a fact. Some may say we don't do an ifs with sports. I don't care. That play, sure, he was offsides by 6 inches, but him lining up offsides had no impact on that play. And Tom Brady threw an interception to lose the game. The Chiefs were going to go to the Super Bowl. Mahomes did everything he could to win that game, and he was on a team that had the 31st ranked defense in the NFL. And again, defenses win championships, and you're not going to be successful when your defense is 31st in the NFL. We get to overtime, even though Tom Brady got bailed out, which we've seen time and time again with D Ford lining up both sides. Mahomes didn't touch the ball in overtime. That's not a clutch thing. That's not you had the opportunity, failed in the moment. He literally did not touch the ball. So I'm not going to hold that against him. But again, to the Brady stan or the casual fan, they will hold that against him. And then if you want to look at the Super Bowl, again, running for 500 yards behind the line of scrimmage, your offensive line was a disaster, and they went up against a top defense in the league that shut them down. And Mahomes had two touchdowns that were dropped. Travis Kelce dropped 2 key passes in that game. That was really the difference. So for me personally, I don't think it is going to hurt his legacy. It's just another Super Bowl loss, because people love to use the individual thing in terms of Super Bowl, in terms of playoff losses, playoff success, this and that. So the head-to-head matchup, it just doesn't look good that a quote-unquote 43-year-old beat a guy who's in the middle of his prime. But I still think Mahomes is coming back with a vengeance next year. I think he will be a different animal. I think the Chiefs are going to try to look at it and say, we got to go have a perfect season. I really think that's going to be their mentality. I think Mahomes is going to come out of the gate, no playing around, no messing around. I think he's going for that MVP and prove to the world, I'm still the best there is. Tom Brady is not on my level. Tom Brady was never on my level. He's coming back with a vengeance. I think they're learning a lot from this. They're going to have to get a different game plan. I think that defense is going to have to tighten up. That offensive line is going to need to stay healthy. But I think one of my favorite quotes, don't poke the bear always bites back. They poked the bear in Mahomes. I think he's going to come back with a vengeance. And it's going to be a show. I'm predicting his fourth year as a starter will be the best year of his career right now. He knows he has something to prove. And when you poke the bear and when you tap that guy in the shoulder, when they know that's not the time to do it, that's where it's going to be ugly. We've seen that with Tom Brady. Again, perfect example. There are a few athletes currently in sports where it's like you don't want to mess with them. You don't want to tap them on the shoulder. You don't want to because you know they're going to bite back. Tom Brady was one of them. How many people said he was washed after last year? Said he's better off retiring. Max Kellerman has stated that he's going to fall off a cliff since 2016. He hears that. People hear the noise. And those kind of players who have that it factor, who have that eye of the tiger, they're not guys to mess with. Because once you say one wrong thing about them, it's game over. Did we see those memes where Tom Brady looks on the ground and says, you don't want to see Tom Brady looking down on the ground? He's right. LeBron James is another prime example of that. After year 16, his first year with the Lakers, they missed the playoffs. He dealt with the groin injury, his first injury in his career. That point, after he came back from injury, was the worst I've ever seen him play basketball in my eyes. Sure, he had his numbers. He would have the triple-doubles, but the Lakers were losing. He had awful fourth-quarter performances. He didn't have the explosion. He looked disinterested, and he tried to trade his whole team for Anthony Davis mid-year, and it destroyed the team chemistry. We all know how that actually aged. When they said Kawhi Leonard's the best player in the world. When they said Kevin Durant was the best player in the world. When they said LeBron is washed. LeBron came out of the gate and said, I'm the washed king now. It was something that you don't poke that guy because he always bites back. We saw it in the when he was played at Quicken Loans Arena. When one guy in the Cleveland bench gave him a look or chirped at him for missing a buzzer beater in the third quarter. LeBron looked at him, he smirked, he dropped 21 in the fourth quarter on 9 of 10 shooting. You don't poke those guys. I think there's 3 athletes currently playing in sports right now. Don't poke them. They will always bite back. LeBron James, Patrick Mahomes, Tom Brady. I don't think there's any other guys you could do that. I thought I was going to be able to say that with Aaron Rodgers, but I was proved wrong. He was another guy, drafting Jordan Love in the first round, moving up in the West. That's basically saying, all right, Rodgers, we're going to move you out the door. Sure, he had an MVP season, which may have been his best season since the 2011 season, where he threw for 45 touchdowns to 6 interceptions. You could say this year he even had a better MVP season. But again, the NFC Championship game, the Green Bay Packers had an opportunity to win. Sure, I think in that game, there's 2 plays why the Packers lost that game. And again, I'm not going to blame Aaron Rodgers for it. But the play before halftime, I believe it was Scotty Miller, ran right past that defense. When as a defensive coordinator and as a defense, the last play before halftime, it's you play prevent, you don't let anyone go behind you, you only move forward, and you bat the pass down. I still don't know how a pass went over the Packers' defensive backs' heads. I still don't know how that happened. That was a killer. It was 14-10 before halftime. That made it 21-10. Coming out of halftime in the third quarter, Rodgers throws over the middle to Aaron Jones. He gets blasted. Fumble. Bucks get the ball inside the 10. Touchdown, 28-10. Right then and there, that's kind of a wrap. You're not going to see Tom Brady blow double-digit leads, let alone an 18-point lead. So, of course, but even though Rodgers did have opportunities in the fourth quarter, despite all that, to make a comeback and win, he didn't. I can't give that to Aaron Rodgers, but there are 3 athletes I would say don't poke the bear, they'll always bite back. Again, LeBron James, Patrick Mahomes, Tom Brady. That's what I think about that. I'm excited to see what Pat Mahomes is going to do. What are your thoughts on that before we change topics?
Yeah, a couple things that we haven't touched on for the Chiefs. We always talk about football being a game of distractions. We had the car accident, unfortunate incident with Andy Reid's son right before they were flying off to Tampa Bay. That's a big thing that pulled some guys' head out of just focusing on the game. Second of all, Mahomes is doing all that running around with a turf toe injury that's requiring surgery this offseason. Even more impressive, his performance when you factor in that kind of thing. And I agree with you. You don't poke the bear. Mahomes coming out of year 3 with already a Super Bowl ring, already having an MVP, now having that Super Bowl loss, it might be scary what he sets out to do to the NFL this year as he continues to grow as just a quarterback and that little bit of a chip on his shoulder as everybody this offseason trashes him for not living up to the expectations and taking over the passing of the torch that everybody was expecting to happen or talking about happening if he were to beat Tom Brady in this game. So I'm really excited for Patrick Mahomes because he is that really nice guy, but he has that competitive spirit that you can tell really permeates the guys around him. When he needs to make a play, everybody kind of looks to him in that huddle. For being such a young guy, he's really advanced in that metric, in my opinion. Yeah, Tom Brady and LeBron, he talked about those guys, but look where they are in their career. And when they were younger, Tom Brady, he was being carried by a top 5 defense and really good running games and great coaching staff. LeBron James, he was still getting beat a little bit here and there. He talked to Tim Duncan after finals, and that really kind of sparked him developing. Those older guys telling him, like, this is going to be your league someday. Patrick Mahomes kind of grabbed it. Tom Brady ripped it back for one off season, I got a feeling. But I think Patrick Mahomes might go on a tear, and it might be a few years before he cools off and looks human again.
Let me ask you guys this question. So the last 20 or so years, LBJ's been dominant in the NBA. It's not even a question. And Tom Brady, for all intents and purposes, has been dominant in the NFL. He hasn't won every Super Bowl. But in terms, when we're talking legacy, that's like the gist of the thought process here. In terms of legacy, when we look back in the NBA or when we look back in the NFL, the past 20 years, are we saying, Aaron Rodgers' legacy is tarnished, Drew Brees, Nick Foles, whoever won? Do we say that these people, their legacy is tarnished, or do we more focus on the more dominant player, right? Patrick Mahomes, yeah, his legacy is tarnished because, no, it's more about, Pat did what he could. The NBA and Leonard, and they did what they could against LBJ. And I think that's just how it is, how life is. The successful people get all the accolades here. So when we talk about legacy, I don't think it hurts Patrick Mahomes because it's going to be one of those things, 20 years from now when we're grandfathers and we're looking back at this broadcast here, we would say, yeah, Pat Mahomes' legacy wasn't tarnished. He just happened to run into the buzzsaw that was Tom Brady in the length of his NFL career here. So I'll ask you two, is it more about tarnishing legacies, or do we give all the love and all the success to the winners here? Personally, I think it's more so about, you run into, buzzsaws. LBJ, dominant. He was drafted the year I graduated high school. Tom Brady, I was in high school. I was a sophomore when he was drafted right out of U of M here. So I think when we look back through history, it's going to be about the guys who won, not necessarily these guys' legacies tarnished because of said winners.
All right, that's gonna wrap up in terms of the Super Bowl recap. But real quick, I definitely want to touch on, before we switch over to NBA, DeShaun Watson trade rumors. I mean, he said he wants out. Texans say he's not going anywhere. Some people said, I heard the Texans say that if they're trading him, it's going to be to the Jets. And then I heard Watson doesn't want to go to the Jets. What do you guys make of the DeShaun Watson trade rumors?
Yeah, so when I look at it, I think that DeShaun Watson is ultimately going to force his way out of Houston. I think his mind's made up. He's done a few things that just make me believe he's not going to go back. And the biggest thing is the head coaching hire. It's not a hire that gets you excited to say, you know what, maybe we can make it work here. I think the issue with the Houston Texans is in the front office and the way the organization operates. And when you have some of your all-time greats speaking out in support of you as you're trying to leave this franchise, that's never a good sign as to how people have felt. I mean, Arian Foster, Andre Johnson, Nuke Hopkins, 3 of the best players in franchise history, have all spoken their displeasure or just, discontent with how things went while they were in Houston. And now J.J. Watt basically making the team just release him, not even trade him to get an asset in return for really the king of the Houston Texans franchise. Just bodes so poorly for this franchise and how they move forward. And I don't think there's any way in hell they get DeShaun Watson to change his mind and want to come back and put it on the line for this organization. It's just not going to happen. And when you look at trade, targets for him, yeah, we heard the Jets were a preferred destination, and then maybe it came out that maybe that wasn't. And then the Dolphins have always been rumored. However, I just feel like the Dolphins and the Jets are really the only team with the assets to acquire him now. The Houston Texans need to acquire draft capital and try to rebuild this team, especially with no J.J. Watt. Now the leader of the defense is gone. Who do you really have on that defense that you're looking to as a star? It's a poor secondary. They get torched by the Colts every time T.Y. Hilton plays them. He goes for $150 and 2 touchdowns. It's amazing how they can just continually be so predictable. And for a team that was on the cusp of doing something pretty special, man, the fall from grace has really been drastic. quick and ugly. So when I look at the assets they're going to need, it's going to be a minimum of 2 first-round picks. Well, who has that? The Jets and the Dolphins. Also, these are both two teams that have a young quarterback that might be of interest to the Houston Texans for now. Maybe Tua is not a guy you believe in. I don't necessarily think Tua is the answer at quarterback. Saw some things this year that made you think, okay, there it is. But on the other hand, you also saw some things out of Tua that make you go, wow, that's a pretty poor throw for any NFL quarterback, regardless of the stature of where they were drafted, what the expectations are, and what have you. And I feel like the Dolphins kind of stunted his growth a little bit as a person, as a quarterback, by continuing to put Ryan Fitzpatrick in to kind of rescue him in those big games. It just doesn't look well. But I do think Tua could be a trade asset. Maybe you bring him in with a couple first, maybe a later next year second, something like that. And you break him off to somebody that might be interested. Maybe Bill Belichick in New England might be willing to throw you a second-round pick for Tua, something you can build with. But they have contract issues, salary cap issues galore, and they're weak at positions that matter in the NFL. And the biggest thing is their offensive line is poor, and they have a huge cap number with Laramie Tunsil at tackle position. So I just feel, and they're stuck in that contract with the inability to really get rid of him because of the $25 million cap hit if they were to even try to trade him and do a full all-out rebuild. This team has continually made poor decisions on the cap, personnel-wise, and really put these guys in position where they're here to sell tickets, not to actually win games. And the coaching staff, yeah, sure, Bill O'Brien did a decent job coaching this team. They had some success, but ownership-wise, front office-wise, how can you allow him to trade Nuke Hopkins other than the fact that they ran this team into the ground from a salary cap standpoint, and they really had no other options because they were really unable to re-sign him and do what they needed to do because of other poor decisions they've made from a money standpoint as a franchise. So I think they're in big trouble, and I think if they try to play hardball with Watson, ultimately it's going to work out worse because the longer they wait and try not to trade him, the less a team's going to be willing to offer, knowing that they have to get something for him if he's not going to show up for camp and OTAs.
So over the years, I've realized I'm old. Like I'm officially in my mid-30s, and that makes me an old man, given what's going on in society. I don't know exactly when it started or when it happened. When I realized, like, you're out of the loop. You don't know what's going on. Was it TikTok? Was it young kids dancing on scooters? I don't know when it happened, but I could tell you when I thought it happened, and that's when all these teams in all sports, they want to build a super team. I believe it started in the NBA a couple seasons ago. And then in football, the last few seasons, I've never seen, in all my years watching football since day one in the 80s, a team, a player, when you're on the team, that's the hand you're dealt. If you're the quarterback of the Jets, that's it. You play your whole career there. Barry Sanders, he didn't whine and complain. He just said, you know what, Ryans? I'm done. I'm out. I'm going to retire. Calvin did it the same way. But now we've transitioned into this atmosphere where teams feel like they hold the cards. They can hold their franchise hostage. I don't want to play here. I'll sit out a year. I don't like that character kind of thing here. I'm going to be a baby. I'm going to sit out. I don't want to play here. And if you don't like, wah, give me my baby bottle. I don't like it. And I can't remember, as far back as into the 90s, it just didn't happen. And now in today's day and age, all these players, we want to go here. No, we don't want, like, they're telling the ownership and the GMs what they should do. That's the job. Your job is to play football, basketball, or baseball. I know building a brand is a big thing now. Again, makes me old. I don't really know what building a brand means, but that's what these players are doing. I'm going to hold the team hostage and effectively cripple everybody within the organization because I just don't want to play here. I haven't had success, and I want to win. That's all it's about, winning and getting money and things along those lines. And in terms of DeShaun Watson leaving Houston, I don't have the slightest idea. It's the second week of February here, and I have no idea. I've read Chicago, what else was it? Chicago, Denver, and even San Francisco, but San Francisco's came out and said we're all in on Jimmy G here. So I don't know. The only thing that I can only speak from what I know. Don't like to make things up. Don't like to sound. I'm an old man. I don't want to be hip and cool, right? So I don't know where he's going to go, but he's going to be out of there. Billy, you hit it the best. They've single-handedly over the last few years have completely destroyed that organization, and they were always competitive because that division, more times than not, the divisional winner has a losing record. Colts can get into the playoffs with an 8-8 record or a 9-7 record. The Houston was set up very nice a few seasons ago. Now it's all done and gone because of Bill O'Brien doing some boneheaded decisions here. So where will Watson go? I don't know, but I was always a big Watson fan. He's on my dynasty fantasy football team. And now it leaves a sour taste in my mouth. And again, that's fine. That's my problem. That's not anybody that's watching this. It's not your guys' problem. It's just something that I have inside of me with character issues. Like, I'm going to be a baby and I want out of here just because I want to do it. I just don't like it. And that officially makes me an old, grumpy, get off my lawn kind of guy.
Well, Bill O'Brien's obviously the main reason why DeShaun Watson is leaving, because he destroyed this franchise. When you have arguably, if not consensusly, the best receiver in the league in DeAndre Hopkins, you trade him for virtually nothing, a second-round pick, a second-round pick's a little, in my opinion, a little overrated for trade value. And then David Johnson, which ever since he broke his wrist, which first game a few seasons ago, he's never been the same. But I don't know how, when you have a superstar under center and a DeShaun Watson, who you could very likely make the claim he's a top 5 quarterback, trade away the best receiver in the league. There was no answer for that whatsoever. Watson still put up ridiculous numbers. I believe I thought he threw for over 4,500 yards, threw for over 40 touchdowns, like 7 interceptions. I think he threw 4. Yeah, I mean, he put up career numbers still, and they weren't successful because they didn't have anything around him. I mean, that's why Watson wants out. I think it is a little bit too much how players are they're so controlling. Like, if they want out, they get out. James Harden, he wanted out, he gets out. Anthony Davis wanted out of New Orleans, he gets out. I mean, it is a lot. But part of it is it's mutual. I mean, the organizations expect loyalty from the players, but then the players get no loyalty from the organization. So, I mean, I guess you got to look at it as a two-way street. I can't blame Watson for wanting out. But in terms of team that should target him, maybe I'm biased, but the New York Jets. I'm a New York Jets fan, unfortunately. But the Jets just have nothing positive in their organization. Besides, I guess, saying you play in New York, which I don't love New York. I mean, I got the New York background behind me. But I mean, besides that, I mean, that's all you got going for them, even though they even play in New Jersey. The Jets just have been looking for a quarterback since Joe Namath. They have. That's the truth. That's the reality of the situation. I mean, Vinny Testaverde had a great run in 98 when they were in the AFC Championship game. He comes back then in 99 when the Jets were the favorite to win the Super Bowl, blows out his Achilles. Haven't really had a quarterback after that. You tried getting Chad Pennington in the 2000 draft, which they passed up on Tom Brady, but everyone did. And then you had Ryan Fitzpatrick in 2015 for 1 year, which was literally statistically the greatest quarterback season in Jets history, in terms of touchdown passes and yards. As ridiculous as that sounds, that's a factual stat. And then Mark Sanchez, aka once called the Sanchez, was the total opposite of that. He was a disaster after he was carried by great defenses. So the Jets do have the most to offer the Texans. Sure, their team's going to thin out. It's not going to be the greatest thing for them. I don't think it's going to make them a playoff contention. But at least it gets the fans like me and other fans something to look forward at. Gets them something exciting. And I think when you put a superstar quarterback under center right then and there, it gives you more reason to build around him. I feel like that gives them more luxury to get other players. But in terms of Sam Darnold, again, I think he's a super talented quarterback. I think he can be very successful in this league. I just think the Jets franchise destroyed him. It's best for both scenarios where they just need to split ways. They need to split ways. I mean, it looked like in 2018 he was going to be a superstar. Again, the next Joe Namath. Didn't age very well. They've had Adam Gase is a disaster, the worst coach I've seen in recent memory. You don't have any receivers to put around you. You gave him 3 number 3 receivers, even though they were all injured all year long. Chris Herndon looked like he had talent in 2018, and then he's just in and out of trouble. Again, the injury bug. Quincy Enunwa has been injured for the past 5 years. You have no running game. The offensive line is disgusting, disaster. So, of course, he's not going to succeed. I just think if Darnold wants to be a successful quarterback in this league, he's got to split ways, and the Jets got to move on from him. I just think they single-handedly destroyed him. Putting Darnold in a system that has some talent around him and a good coach, I think can develop him. Again, he's 23 years old, but I do think the Jets are the best option for in terms of Deshaun Watson and the New York Jets, because the Jets just need a quarterback, and that's where you started at. But I mean, that's all I wanted to touch on in terms of the Watson trade. I want to flip the script to NBA a little bit. Anthony Davis' injury to the Los Angeles Lakers. AD's been in and out of the lineup all year. His production has not been the same whatsoever. Part of me is saying that his touches just looked off a little bit. I mean, his free throw percentage is significantly down. His last year just looked like he had better looks, and his touch around the rim was better, and it's not there this year. And then maybe it's the injury bug, and then he aggravated his calf, and it's scary to look like it's an Achilles injury. And without AD, obviously, they are not title contenders. But what do you guys make of AD's injury? How much is this going to affect LeBron? How much is this going to affect the Lakers, the Western Conference? What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I mean, looking at, like you said, his calf injury about a month ago that's kind of turned into an Achilles, which for a basketball player, outside of an ACL injury, an Achilles is kind of about the scariest thing for a guy's bounce, mobility, and those kind of things. And like you said, he's really just kind of looked off. And when we start talking about a big guy with lower leg injuries down and around and near the foot and ankle, we've seen a lot of guys have those injuries that really curb their career. So to me, he's dealing with that right Achilles injury right now. It's been lingering. They need to avoid a major setback and just rest him. And like they said they're going to do, 2 to 3 weeks. No rupture currently, but risking a rupture just wouldn't be smart for the Lakers franchise. He's already missed 5.5, 6 games this year. Without AD, the odds of them repeating are greatly diminished, and they don't need to have him right now in the regular season. Seeding's not that important for this group of guys. They need to just get to the playoffs healthy, especially with LeBron this late in his career. Injuries are a big concern for this group of guys. However, if he does end up rupturing his Achilles rather, he just signed that 5-year extension. He'll miss this year and probably next year. So 40% of this huge 5-year extension, he's already going to miss. And then that third year when he comes back, is he going to be the same? We've seen guys typically not be the same just quite yet. It usually takes about a year of playing before they turn into the same guy they were. Now we're talking 3 years down the road for LeBron. What's the outlook for the Lakers? The implications are huge for them if they mishandle this injury, and they need to be smart. They've got some guys with Kyle Kuzma and Graham Harrell that could use these minutes to develop into more of a role. Both of these guys, we're seeing their stats down, points down. Graham Harrell's 5 points a game fewer than he had with the Clippers last year in his 6th man of the year. So him with these minutes and working them into this offense could be really beneficial for the Lakers in the long run depth-wise while they let AD get 100%. And if I'm anybody in the Lakers with any say-so, he doesn't see the court until he's 100% ready to go. Not when he feels like he can play, not when the medical staff feels like he can go, when he's 100% healthy. And if that means not until playoff time, that means not until playoff time.
Well, personally, how is this going to affect the Lakers? Let's say 10 years ago would have been ho-hum. LeBron can carry the team on his back. We've seen him do it a lot. Took the Cavs, a no-name team, to the finals here. But this is just going to be more strenuous on LeBron James here. And if you look, I believe they went 3-1 last week. Some slow starts. They they beat the Thunder in overtime, and then they beat the Grizzlies. But then against a very good Denver Nuggets team, they were blown out. And that just goes to show, what they're what they're about, let's say. You barely get by on a couple okay teams. NBA, it's all talented. And then when you get up, toe-to-toe with a really good team, supposed to be on par with the big bad Lakers, you lose big time. So, again, LeBron James isn't in his early 20s or even his mid-20s. The guy is my age. He's 36. It's shocking to me. He's still playing at such a high level. But as the season goes on here, it's going to be more strenuous and more stressful for LBJ. How long? He's not Superman, although he acts like it, and I think he is. He's not going to be able to do this year in and year out as he ages. Father Time, guys, is undefeated, and it's going to catch up with some of these people sooner or later. So it affects the Lakers drastically. But again, not to be, I hate to keep saying this, preface things, but not to be rude or to be a jerk. We know what AD is. We know what to expect from him. This happens all the time. He finally got it together, put it together for them last season, and this happens again. I'm not blaming the player. It's just a victim of circumstance when you're on the court or on the field and you get hurt, or you're sore, you have soft tissue injuries, things like that. But they have to have some sort of a backup plan because AD is like this. He's made of glass, people say all the time. But I'm with Billy here. All those minutes are going to have to go to someone else, to another set of players. And again, you don't ever want to hope or pray for an injury, but in the long run, it could be good for some of these guys off the bench here. So LBJ is going to carry the load. That's no secret here. And we'll see how much magic he has in his bag.
Cruz, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming on. What are your thoughts on AD's injury? How is this going to affect the Lakers moving forward?
Yeah, thanks for having me. So honestly, I think LeBron James can win the MVP with this stretch that he's going to have to go through basically by himself, especially with the West that it is this year. Utah's no joke. The Clippers are playing great even without Kawhi and Paul George. Phoenix is a sleeping giant. Portland's starting to get their roll on. So it's going to be very interesting to see how LeBron at his age and how he's been able to take care of his body all throughout these years can carry this team. I think they're going to be okay. I think as long as they don't rush Anthony Davis back until after the All-Star break, I think that they'll be okay. I don't think that right now with the way their schedule lines up and the way Utah's looking, I don't think the 1 seed is what they should be aiming for. I think if they are realistic, they should still aim for that 2 or 3 seed. Right now, it kind of looks like Utah is going to, the way they're playing and the way they're looking, especially with Anthony Davis being out, I think Utah is lining up for the 1 seed, and the Lakers should, realistically aim for the 2 or 3 seed. Look at possibly if this injury is going to be longer than 2 or 3 weeks. Maybe look at some trade options. I know that there's been some rumors that they're looking at Mo down in Orlando, and I would just kind of explore that option. But I don't think they should rush a player like Anthony Davis back. I think if you want to look at an example, Kevin Durant, him coming back in the 2019 finals against Toronto, him just kept injury coming back, and then eventually he had to sit out a year.
I have an interesting perspective here. I think, Chris kind of touched on it. If AD is not there in the foreseeable future and the postseason, the Lakers have no fighter's chance to win the championship. Right now, I think healthy, they're obviously the favorites to win the title. I will pick them to win the title if AD is healthy. But if he is not, this team is a second-round exit. I really don't think they're better than that. I mean, if LeBron pulls off a Hercules of a postseason run, maybe you get to the finals, which I wouldn't pick them. I don't think they could beat the Jazz without AD. I don't think they could beat the Clippers without AD. And if they play the Nets, I think the Nets would blow them out, like the way the Warriors blew out the Cavs. I think without AD, it's that drastic of a matchup. But here's the thing. For LeBron James, ever since June 19th, 2016, LeBron James has been just compared to Michael Jordan. Every action he's made, whether it's on the basketball court, whether it's off the court, the way he walks, the way he talks, his antics, everything he does gets compared to Michael Jordan, especially his legacy. And the biggest thing is rings. I understand that. That's how he's really going to, quote-unquote, catch Jordan in terms of legacy. But again, a big thing is the MVP. The MVP. Jordan has 5. LeBron has 4. LeBron won 4 out of 5 MVPs from 2009 to 2013. We all know this. He didn't get the one in 2011, which in my opinion he got robbed from when Derrick Rose won it. But this right here is maybe a blessing in disguise for LeBron to impact his legacy. Because again, without AD, they're not going to win a ring. So therefore, he's going to have another playoff loss or something, I guess, held against him. But in terms of regular season accolades, to tie Michael Jordan in terms of MVPs, I think is huge for him. And again, MVPs, I made the claim it's overrated. I still stand by that. But I believe getting that award is all about narratives. It's all about narratives. Right now, as we stand today, I think it's a two-headed race between LeBron and Embiid. I don't really think there's a third guy who could put a last-second push. I really think it's LeBron and Embiid. A lot of people are favoring Embiid because any other player not named LeBron James who has a breakout or career year will always get it over LeBron because of voter fatigue to just give it to somebody else. And again, I'm a believer, we all know the media likes LeBron a lot. There's a lot of LeBron fans. The media will try to defend him any way possible, but they like him. The media loves Michael Jordan. I don't think they want to give LeBron the fifth. I don't. I personally I strongly believe the media does not want LeBron to get that fifth MVP. But in terms of narratives, he has the best narrative behind him right now. He's played every game this year. He's going to try to play all 72. I can promise you that. Where you think, oh no, he shut in minutes, this, that. No. LeBron is trying to win MVP. He knows what's at stake. Again, he thinks he got robbed last year. And he won Finals MVP with the Lakers, so this is an opportunity. Okay, I could win MVP right now. Giannis can't get it because he won 2 in a row. We know the narratives. You don't want to give it to a guy 3 years in a row. That would be the only guy since Larry Bird. I think this is an opportunity. He has so much behind him to get the award. Because, again, it's what the media chooses. And it's all about storylines and headlines to give the award to somebody. Look how many narratives LeBron has on someone. Again, he's LeBron James, so he's going to be the center of attention as always. He's in year 18. He's 36 years old. He's coming off a Finals MVP where we had a shutdown for 5 months, didn't know if there was going to be a season, dealt with everything there was in the bubble, winning Finals MVP, and then a 72-day turnaround to this year and playing every game. Just by playing every game is going to mean a lot to the media and a lot in terms of giving this award to him. I really believe that. And we know what he's going to do in terms of his numbers. No matter what year it is, no matter if it's a Tuesday, a Friday, no matter if it's November, April, LeBron gets LeBron numbers. The 25, the 7-7, or 25-8-8, 27-7-7. He's always going to have those numbers. And now he has to carry a heavier load with no Anthony Davis. Without Anthony Davis, the Lakers are a good competitive team. That's a second-round exit in the Western Conference without him. He doesn't have AD to lean on. His minutes have been ramped up, and they're just going to be even higher. And he knows what's at stake. Maybe he tries to hide it. Maybe he's going to say, MVP's not my goal. No. LeBron's going for the MVP. And if he's going to play close to 40 minutes a night, his numbers are going to have to get better. And if the Lakers are a 1-3 seed, I'm telling you right now, LeBron James will be hoisting his 5th MVP. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I definitely think if he can carry this team into a top 3 seed, especially with the Clippers and the way the Jazz are playing right now, which we'll touch on here in a bit, then he's probably, rightfully so, the league's MVP. And like you said, 40 minutes a night, his numbers are going to increase. He's going to try to pick up that load and try to make up for the lack of that other superstar. It's going to be interesting to see what he can do. But I definitely think if they end up with a top 3 seed, hands down, no questions asked, LeBron is and will be the MVP this year.
Fantastic comparison, Falco. Narratives. That's what it's always about, and it's kind of like like high school, like who's like the prom queen or the homecoming king. It's like it's all a popularity contest. So I'm one of the guys who, again, on my old man narrative, I don't pay much mind to the seasonal MVP because one guy wins or one guy doesn't, because it's all based on narratives. I couldn't have said it any better than that here. So LeBron, he's going to do what he does. Again, you said it best, basically piggybacking here, nothing earth-shattering. But is this the year where LeBron kind of falls off? Age catches up with him a little bit, and he's forced to carry the whole load yet again on a Lakers team where that wasn't when he came into LA. I feel like that was the narrative. You're not going to have to do everything in LA. We're the Lakers. We're big and bad. We'll surround you with guys, and you could just be, you could be okay. You're not going to have to shoulder the entire load. So again, based on narratives, that could be something that we need to look at here. Does he fall off a little bit? Do his averages come down? I don't know, but it's going to be a fun rest of the season here to see how it plays out.
No, I agree. I think LeBron is really going to have to step up his game, and he's had AD, taking so much of the load off him, and especially last year. Because if you look at LeBron's first year at the Lakers, age kind of did creep up and injuries started creeping up, and we saw LeBron actually be human for once. And then now that he's in his 3rd years with the Lakers and he's losing his best player, his best asset with him, he's going to have to step up. And I like the point that you bring up. Is age finally going to start to show with him having to carry the loads where he is going to have to start playing almost up to 40 minutes a game? So I think right now it's right him and Embiid. Embiid is on the best team in the East. He's averaging almost 30 points a game, which is awesome for a big man, especially with Embiid. I know Bradley Beal might get a little bit of love if he keeps up leading the NBA in scoring, but right now, unfortunately, the Wizards just aren't that great, even when he does ball out. I think the only way Beal gets in the MVP conversation is if he gets traded to a better team. But I think this is the next couple weeks to a month. I would say even if I'm the Lakers, I wouldn't be surprised if AD sits out even after the All-Star break for a little bit, just to not risk injury for the playoffs if the Utah Jazz continue the route that they're on. And they're kind of looking like they're living and dying by the three, and they're not dying yet. So they look great. So if I'm LeBron, it's nut up or shut up at this point. and we've seen over time, he always shows up, always does. And so I'm excited to see what he can do, especially at his age. And hopefully he gets that MVP because, like I said, it would be great to see the narrative of him tying Michael Jordan in MVPs, which I believe he should have already done that to begin with. But finally, him getting that MVP at this stage in his career would be awesome.
I mean, yeah, I'm like just an MVP in year 18 would be something we look back at and say for the not 82 games, the 72 game stretch. I mean, he's proved he had the best regular season, and that would be the best way to make up him not winning the title if AD's not there. But again, the real blessing this can be for LeBron's legacy is AD misses a stretch. LeBron keeps him in a top 3 seed. His numbers will get better if they're going to win, so they're going to go hand in hand. And then AD comes back late in the regular season, gets healthy, then they win the title. That would be the best scenario for LeBron's legacy. And again, as ridiculous as that is, AD is one of my favorite players. People accuse me as being a big LeBron guy or whatever, but I am a huge fan of AD. I think just how versatile his game is, inside, outside. He could play like a guard, but he's a true big. His touch around the rim is something that I think is very underappreciated and underrated as a player. But the people who know basketball, who played basketball, understand his touch for a big man is not something you just see every day. And again, he's a generational talent. I want him back as soon as possible because I really enjoy watching him. But in terms of LeBron's case, and again, his teammates too, which Chris touched on, this could be a blessing for the entire team. Maybe it's good for AD to miss some time, heal up, get right, and then maybe mentally get right, because something's not right with him this year. I classify as AD as a top 5 player, and I'll always defend that AD is a top 5 player in the league, even like right now. But I mean, something looks off this year from him. He does not look like AD last year, doesn't look like AD from 2018, or whatever the case may be. Him getting right, and then it's going to prove that Kyle Kuzma always tries to pump out his chest that he's that guy. Some people tried to say that he was a real number 2 option, which we knew that was never the case. And he doesn't play that well when AD's in the lineup. But I think this is a stretch where Kuzma could get some confidence. His numbers could get up put up close to 20 points a game. Dennis Schroeder's going to have to play a really big role, and so is Harold, which they have all year long. So I think the Lakers still will be a top team in the West. I still think they can be competitive. But if AD's not right, or if this turns into an Achilles injury, which knock on wood, I pray to God it's not, but I do think it's going to turn out to be, because we all know what happened with Kevin Durant. This seems like deja vu in terms of the situation with Kevin Durant. AD's got to get back if they want to win a title, or else they're just a second round exit. But to switch gears, I want to talk about the Utah Jazz now. We got to put some notice on them. The number 1 seed in the Western Conference, the best record in the NBA, and now AD's out. Are the Jazz the best team in the NBA right now?
Yeah, right now you got to say they are 19-1 in their last 20 games. However, they're as legit as they need to be to lose to a healthy Lakers team or maybe the Clippers in the playoffs. I mean, yeah, what they're doing is great regular season, but it's all about the playoffs in the NBA. Even look at the run the Lakers and Clippers. They're both within 3 games of them right now. Of course, we expect the Lakers to maybe drop off a little bit in this race. But I expect the Clippers to get better. And we talked last time I was on with you, Brandon, that the Clippers are probably most well-equipped to get the 1 seed in the Western Conference. So, in my opinion, as the season progresses, I don't think this hot streak continues. They did just beat the 76ers the other night, but no Joel Embiid in that game as well either, and it wasn't really just a total thrashing. It was a decent win, but nothing crazy. I do think the Jazz are catching their stride, likely to be a top 3 seed, maybe even the 1 seed, and the AD's injury could help them stay above LA. But if they keep winning ball games and leading, I think they're in good shape. But they're also leading the league in point differential as well right now, which is a very big stat as they get progressing into the season. They're winning handedly in a lot of these games. Jordan Clarkson took a big stride the other night. I think this team is meshing really well. However, I feel like when it comes to playoff time, the big dogs are going to be the big dogs. Getting a top seed would be a big thing for the Jazz. However, I don't feel like they're the best team in the NBA. Maybe right now they're playing the best. But when it comes to playoff time and winning a series, there's a couple other guys I'd take over them.
I'm just thankful you had me, just personal thought real quick. I'm thankful you had me on to talk NBA because I make no secret. I'm not that big of an NBA guy, but I think that's my best attribute on the show here. I can just be like a casual fan and give some honest advice and give my honest opinion here, and no one's going to rake me over the coals for it. But if you look at what the Jazz have been doing, it's kind of what we've just talked about the Lakers hopefully doing in the absence of AD. Mike Conley has been out. I'm not comparing Conley and AD here by any stretch of the imagination, but Joe Ingles and Jordan Clarkson, they've been, kind of kicking it up a little bit here. And again, as Billy said, they've won 18 out of 19 games here. And I personally just, outsider looking in, I don't see them cooling off here anytime soon. So if I had to, I know you're not asking me, but I would probably go Jazz, Clippers, and then the Suns and the Lakers. Is my top four here.
No, I think right now the Utah Jazz are the most dangerous team in basketball, not because of the talent that they have, because it's not that. Because if you look at, they obviously. You look at the Nets. They have KD. They have James Harden. They have Kyrie Irving. And then you look at the Philadelphia 76ers. They have Ben Simmons. They have Embiid, and they look like they're the best team in the East. But what the Utah Jazz does is they make you uncomfortable. Yes, they are fourth in the league in scoring. They're first in the league in rebounding, which is a very huge point, especially in basketball because they're controlling the tempo. They're third in points allowed. So they're so balanced on offense and defense that I think that they're just making teams uncomfortable. They're playing very consistent, and then you have Donovan Mitchell, who's playing great. He's averaging over 24 points a game. I think this team is young. I think they built this team to be this consistent because they know that they're not going to outstar the Lakers. They're not going to outstar the Clippers, but they're building this team to stop the LeBron James in the 80s. They're building these teams to stop the Kawhi Leonards and the Paul George, to play this shutdown consistent defense and also play consistent offense as well. I think that the Utah Jazz right now, the way they've looked, it's hard not to argue that they are the best team in basketball. I think they would take care of the Philadelphia 76ers. I think the only team in the East that could beat them in a 7-game series would be the Nets, and that's if they are at full strength. I think right now, even with a healthy AD, just the way that the Utah Jazz has looked, I think it would be a 7-game series in a Western Conference final.
Billy?
I don't think they could push it to that 7th game. I mean, they're playing team basketball. Like you said, they're very, very, very consistent, and that's the biggest thing when it gets to be late in the season. However, I just feel like they're, not being – you mentioned being outstarred by the Lakers. I think ultimately that'll wear them down later in the season, but mostly because this winning streak becomes big with expectations. And is this team equipped well enough to handle big expectations? I'm not so sure they are. What do you got, Beastie?
Looking at it from the outsider looking in, as I've said here, expectations do lead to resentments, right? They're expected to do something, they don't provide, and it kind of throws the team in turmoil here. But on the other side of it, when you get moving like that, confidence is like a snowball rolling down the hill. Once you get going and you get moving, these guys they become connected and they're playing, out of their minds, and there's no signs of them slowing down because of that here. So, I'm with you. I'm not going to get too much, into the basketball here and make me look like a fool in terms of who I like and who I dislike here. But the Jazz have looked fantastic, and I'm excited watching them. And again, if I may say, Denver's been fantastic.
Sure, the Jazz have the best record in the NBA, but am I right to classify them as the best team in the NBA? 100%, no way, no how. If everyone's healthy, the Lakers are the best team in the NBA. And then a close second is the Brooklyn Nets, and the Jazz are not beating the Brooklyn Nets on their best day. People are trying to overhype the Jazz and so excited about the Jazz because it's a surprise. It's a small market team. It's a team that never built a super team, didn't go out and superstars, didn't join via free agency. It's you drafted your franchise player in Donovan Mitchell, Rudy Gobert, and then put pieces around them, shooting the lights out from 3, dominating. So people are excited about that, and I get it. But we can't overreact to that. Like, the Jazz are good. And again, if every team's healthy, I will not pick them against the Clippers. I think Kawhi's a guy that he has a lot to prove this year. George Paul does as well, even though we know George Paul in the playoffs. But I mean, I still wouldn't pick them over the Clippers. I think the Clippers got better than they did last year. The Lakers are still the top team in the league with the best player in the league. And again, 80 status is going to be a big thing on that. And if the Jazz get to the finals, they're not beating the Brooklyn Nets. I am so high in the Brooklyn Nets. And again, I don't think there's a team who's really going to dethrone them outside of the Lakers. But speaking on the Nets, I want to switch gears quick for the last last topic of today's show. I want to talk about the 76ers. Joel Embiid, arguably the favorite to win MVP. I think, according to Key MVP Ladder, he's second behind LeBron. They have the best record in the Eastern Conference. Simmons dropped 42 last night. I mean, should the Sixers be the favorite over the Nets? Are they the team to beat in the East, or we got to pump the brakes?
I think we definitely got to pump the brakes. Are they playing well? Yes, they're leading well. But now we have Joel Embiid a little bit banged up. Missed the game the other night against the Jazz with a back injury. How is that going to linger? Is he going to be 100% down the stretch? That's a big factor. This guy's averaging 30 and 11 basically, which is huge. Tobias Harris, the most points per game since the last year he had with the Clippers, becoming that second option, and Simmons really stepping up, sure. But I don't think they're the favorite, and I don't think they will win the East. I like Milwaukee and Brooklyn to outrun them at the end of the day in the East easy. And also, I really like the Celtics. Jason Tatum spent some time out with COVID and still kind of isn't himself, and yet they're still only 4 games back of the 76ers as well as they're playing. So, in my opinion, I think Brooklyn with Kyrie, Harden just getting there, Kyrie coming back from his little vacation that he decided to take midseason there, and with KD playing the way he is, I think the Nets get going, and I think they get really hot at the end of the year as they try to get this defense figured out. You're hearing them starting to talk about their defense needing to pick it up from inside their own locker room. So that's their big weakness, and I like the Celtics a lot too. As Tatum kind of gets back in the flow of things, he himself said he's not quite himself after the COVID situation. So I like those 3 teams with the Sixers. It's going to be a really fun race out east, and the Sixers, they're primed to run right with those guys, but ultimately, I think the Nets start really gapping these guys sooner rather than later.
In my limited time, watching back some games and reading some articles here, I'm going to, concur with everybody here. I don't think the Sixers are the favorites over the Nets. The Nets are going to get hotter than hell. I mean, how could they not with the collection of players that they have here? They've been starved for so long for any sort of, success. If you look back, when they were playing the Pistons in like the early to mid 2000s in the Eastern Conference Finals here. And when you look at the Sixers, Embiid has been unbelievably good. And then last night, I actually watched a little bit of that game. Ben Simmons had probably the best 12 minutes of his career yesterday, but there's more than 12 minutes in a game here. So Ben Simmons has to be one of their best players, let's say second best player aside from Joel Embiid, and he's just too inconsistent for me. Every time he hits a three-pointer, social media goes nuts because it's just not what he does here. So Sixers should not be the favorites over the Nets. I'm with you, and I'm not agreeing just because it's like the cool hip thing to do here. The Nets have a very great collection, of players here, and once they put it all together, they're going to be, next to impossible to beat in a weaker Eastern Conference.
Yeah, it's honestly a 3-team race right now, and it's actually really disappointing how bad the Eastern Conference has been this year. There's only 3 teams in the Eastern Conference that have a record above 500. It's actually very sad. You look at the team that represented the East last year, the Miami Heat. They're currently sitting, I believe, at the 10 seed. So it's honestly going to come down between when are they going to mesh right now? Because I'm looking at their record and their conference record against the East, and they're 10-9. With KD, I know they just added Harden. I know Kyrie's been doing whatever Kyrie has been doing at this point. I want to say it was for a good reason for him leaving, but we don't know. I think that if Brooklyn can mesh at the right time, I don't think it's close. I think Philly is just there. Look, they've lost 3 games in a row, same as Milwaukee. I think that every year we hear this is the year for Philly, this is the year for Philly, this is the year for Philly, and it has not been the year for Philly. It's been the last couple of years. Milwaukee has been there. I think it's Milwaukee's division to lose until Brooklyn gets their mesh together and their chemistry together. And look, it took LeBron and D-Wade and Bosh to get a year under their belt. Because if you look at that 2011 year when they did get to the finals, they still didn't look all that great. And then that 2012 season came and 2013 came, and they were the best team in the NBA. I think right now it's Milwaukee, and I think it's kind of hard to argue when you do have, the two-time MVP. But like I said, if Brooklyn can figure it out, and especially get rolling hot towards in the playoffs, or maybe possibly after the All-Star break, it's going to be hard to pick against the Brooklyn Nets not to make it to the NBA Finals, especially in this weak Eastern Conference.
Yeah, a few things on that to wrap up. Number one, the hype around the Milwaukee Bucks, I still don't understand. I didn't understand it in 2019. I didn't understand it last year, and I definitely don't understand it this year. Yeah. People are still confused, are still hyping up the Bucks to get out of the East. When Giannis can't close, we go time and time again he can't because he can't shoot. He doesn't have a post game. Chris Middleton's not a very good closer either. He's not a great playoff performer. Giannis is honestly a bad half-court player on the offensive side of the ball because he likes to get out in transition. I mean, him attacking the rim is probably the best I've ever seen next to LeBron, but that's besides the point because in the postseason, the game slows down, this and that. The Bucks I'm not sold on at all. I never was, I never will be. And then the Sixers, sure, Embiid has a legit shot to win MVP, and he actually might because of, again, narrative, storylines, having a career year, this and that. But they're not doing anything in the postseason. It's just like last year the Bucks were the 1 seed, get bounced in the second round. Bucks were the 1 seed in 2019, get bounced in the Eastern Conference Finals. Then you have in 2018 the 59-win Toronto Raptors. Everyone was hyping them up to get the brakes beat off you in the second round. 2017, the number 1 seed Boston Celtics are like, could they beat the Cavs? No. They got the brakes beat off them. I mean, it's just like I don't believe in the hype whatsoever. It's just like some teams are going to break out in the regular season. A star player will break out. And again, in terms of postseason basketball, in terms of the game slowing down, in terms of half-court offense, Embiid can't really play his back to the basket even though he's shooting the lights out from three. I believe he's around 40% from three-point range. He's giving you 29 and 11 right now. He's created a little pull-up mid-range. I mean, for someone to do that size is remarkable. It's unbelievable, and nobody could guard him down low because he's just a physical freak of nature. So sure, I like Embiid a lot. I think Seth Curry was an awesome pickup. I mean, he's a very underrated shooter, and he represents Curry the right way in terms of shooting the basketball. Danny Green looks like his shot got better from last year. I mean, last year he was a disaster. Dwight Howard just a physical presence inside on the defensive side of the ball. And then, I mean, just Ben Simmons is just like a guy who's not going to be able to close. Like we saw it last night. Like as great as a performance he had, you can't shoot. If you can't shoot, you can't close out games. I mean, you're going to be relied on to hit jumpers or relied on to go to the free throw line. Your top players. And Simmons can't do that. So, I mean, I don't believe in the Sixers whatsoever. I think it's the Nets and everybody else. But the Eastern Conference, I don't know how else to say it. The Eastern Conference sucks. It's terrible. I really believe it's just the Brooklyn Nets and everybody else. But I mean, that's going to wrap up today's show. If you guys want to shout out your podcasts or any platforms you speak on, anything amongst those lines, there's any last thoughts about the show, feel free to do it now before we wrap up.
Yeah, Billy Whit, follow me at BWhit24. Catch me Wednesday nights on Belly Up Fantasy Live. We break it down, all the NFL stuff, heading into our offseason, finishing up quarterbacks this week for 2021, moving into running back soon. So come hang out with us for your off-season preparation for your fantasy stuff.
Thanks for having me on. I'm at Detroit Beastie, and again, having me on and talking NBA is kind of a risky thing for a show or a co-host because I never claimed to know a lot, but all I can do is be honest and give my opinion. So thank you for letting me do all that this afternoon.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. You can find me at The Real Cruise Docs on Twitter. And then, of course, you can check out my podcast on Wednesdays, the Cruise Control Podcast. This week I have UFC fighter Eric Anders. And then next week will be ESPN's Tom Luganville on the show. Definitely check it out. And thanks for having me on.
Always a pleasure to have you guys on. Great show. And a lot of you guys probably know already, my platform is the Falco Takeaway. You can find me on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube, and even TikTok. I've been on TikTok lately. Like to draw back at some people, like to rebut some people's takes. But if there's any other time you guys want to come on, check out my podcast. Make sure we collab, whatever the case may be. But again, thanks for coming on, guys. Fun show. I'll talk to you guys soon.
Thanks, man.